the world on the edge. If World War III ever erupts, it will not look like the wars humanity has seen before. It won't be trenches like World War I, nor city bombings like World War II. It will be a war fought simultaneously on land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace, unfolding at a speed beyond human comprehension. Modern weapons don't need days to cause destruction. They can destabilize nations in minutes. Imagine a world where satellites suddenly go dark, GPS stops working, internet collapses, banks freeze, power grids shut down, fighter jets scream across borders, hypersonic missiles carve fire through the sky at 5 times the speed of sound. Nations with nuclear arsenals prepare their launch codes. The world watches the clock tick, not forward, but downward, to extinction. This is not science fiction. It is the reality of a world armed with technologies capable of ending civilization. This documentary explores step by step what would happen if World War III breaks out, what nations would face, what kind of damage the world could suffer, and what humanity's future might look like in the ashes.
Every great war begins with a spark, a small event that spirals out of control. Maybe it starts with a miscalculation in the South China Sea. Maybe a missile accidentally lands on the wrong territory. Maybe a cyber attack shuts down a nation's power grid, and it's mistaken for a declaration of war. Or perhaps a regional conflict, Russia versus NATO, China versus Taiwan, India versus Pakistan, Iran versus Israel, suddenly pulls superpowers into a chain reaction. The spark doesn't have to be big. It only needs to be misunderstood. In today's interconnected world, the moment one nation deploys missiles or drones, global alliances activate automatically. NATO, the Quad, CSTO, and other alliances were built on the principle that an attack on one is an attack on all. So a conflict that begins between two nations can transform into a war involving dozens within hours. No world leader may want World War III. But history has proven that wars don't always start with intentions. Sometimes they start with mistakes. If World War III erupts, the first hour will determine the fate of millions. Before the first missile is fired, the first attack might be invisible. Hackers backed by nations target power grids, financial systems, airports, military command centers, hospitals, water treatment plants, nuclear reactors. A successful cyber attack can cause more damage than bombs. No electricity, no banking, no communication, no water purification, no emergency services. One keystroke can plunge an entire country into darkness. Within minutes, hypersonic missiles, impossible to intercept, strike. Military bases, radar stations, fuel depots, aircraft carriers, strategic bridges, communication hubs. These weapons travel faster than Mach 5. By the time radars detect them, it's already too late. Millions of autonomous drones fill the skies, attacking tanks, artillery, command centers, critical infrastructure. Unlike human pilots, drones don't get tired, don't panic, and don't need rest. 1,000 drone swarm can overwhelm an entire battalion. Satellites become early targets. If GPS, communication, and spy satellites are destroyed, airlines lose navigation, ships lose positioning, missiles lose accuracy, financial systems collapse, global communication breaks down. The world enters an age of chaos, not because of bombs falling, but because the invisible systems holding modern civilization together stop working. Even before nuclear weapons enter the equation, World War III would crush the global economy. Stock markets would crash within minutes. Currencies would fall. Oil prices would skyrocket. Global trade would freeze. Factories would shut down. Supply chains would collapse. Banks would impose withdrawal limits. People would panic buy essentials. Within weeks, the world could face mass unemployment, food shortages, fuel rationing, medical drug shortages, hyperinflation. Countries dependent on imports, especially food-importing nations, would suffer the most. Nations with fragile economies could collapse internally even before bombs reach them.
The battlefields of World War III. If the war escalates into full global conflict, here is how the world would suffer. Europe could become the first major battlefield, NATO versus Russia, with Baltic states under threat and Eastern Europe facing missile barrages. Millions of refugees would flee west, leading to massive destruction of infrastructure. Cities like Warsaw, Berlin, Helsinki, or Bucharest could become frontline zones. A second major war zone emerges in East Asia: China versus Taiwan, China versus Japan, North Korea versus South Korea, with U.S. involvement in the Pacific. Warships, submarines, and missiles turn the Pacific into a deadly chessboard. The Middle East could become the third firestorm. Iran, Israel, and Arab nations could be pulled in, triggering oil supply disruption, drone and missile warfare, regional collapse, and a global energy crisis. South Asia is a nuclear tension point. India and Pakistan hold hundreds of nuclear weapons. A conflict between them would be catastrophic beyond imagination. The Arctic and space are new frontiers. Nations fight for satellite control, Arctic resources, and global navigation systems. The battlefield expands beyond Earth. Humanitarian damage, the true cost of war. In World War II, 60 to 70 million people died. In World War III, the death toll could be far worse. Not only because of weapons, but because modern society depends on fragile systems. If those systems break, humans suffer in ways never seen before. War destroys farmlands, fertilizer production, food storage, and transportation networks, leading to a global food crisis. Countries relying on imported wheat, corn, rice, and cooking oil could face mass hunger within months. WW3 could displace hundreds of millions. Cities destroyed, borders closed, camps overwhelmed, diseases spreading, families permanently separated. This would be a refugee crisis on an unimaginable scale. War disrupts hospitals, drug supply, medical equipment, electricity for life support, and clean water for hygiene, leading to medical system collapse. Simple infections could become deadly again. Hospitals might turn away patients. Ambulances might not have fuel. Doctors might flee or be killed. Even survivors may never recover from trauma, loss, fear, anxiety, post-war violence, and social breakdown. This is the human cost. Numbers cannot describe it. Every global war reaches a moment when diplomacy collapses, when nations stop talking and start surviving. This is the point of no return, where World War III transforms from a regional conflict to a civilization-ending event. Borders are breached, missiles exchanged, and cyberattacks shut down major economies. Tens of thousands die within days, millions are displaced, and global markets freeze. Governments activate highest wartime protocols. Nuclear submarines go silent, fighter jets scramble, and satellites detect troop buildups. For decades, nuclear weapons served as deterrents, but in World War III, that deterrence begins to fail. Tactical nuclear weapons, though smaller, produce massive shockwaves, deadly radiation, and immediate casualties in the hundreds of thousands. Once a nuclear weapon is used, the opposing side faces impossible choices: retaliate and risk global extinction, or refuse and risk losing the war. If the situation spirals, strategic nuclear strikes target capital cities, industrial hubs, and military command centers, vaporizing everything within kilometers. Even without nuclear weapons, World War III causes catastrophic environmental harm, from industrial fires and ocean pollution to agricultural disaster and global famine. This is the grim reality of the point of no return, a future we must strive to avoid at all costs. In a hypothetical World War III, the very fabric of society would unravel. Modern life, dependent on stability, would collapse as humanity reverts to primal survival instincts. Governments would lose control, emergency services would cease, and fear would replace order. Cities, once centers of life, would become survival zones, their infrastructure failing. Millions would flee urban centers, escaping bombings, looting, and starvation. Highways would become choked with abandoned cars, and the world would face mass displacement. Megacities, once global capitals, would turn into battlegrounds. Bridges would collapse, skyscrapers crumble, and every building would become a battlefield. Economies would shift entirely to war production, with factories reprogrammed for tanks and missiles. Rationing would become mandatory, and black markets would thrive. Famine and disease would spread rapidly, as farmlands are bombed and medical supplies vanish. Crowded refugee camps would become breeding grounds for deadly outbreaks. Daily life would revolve around survival. searching for food, purifying water, and avoiding conflict. Education would disappear, replaced by lessons in survival. Globalization would vanish, isolating countries and collapsing multinational corporations. The world would regress to a pre-industrial state, pushing humanity back decades. This breakdown of global society would leave behind a legacy of fear, confusion, and profound psychological trauma, forever altering the human experience. As World War III intensifies, nations are exhausted, economies collapse, and alliances fracture. The world faces a stark choice: negotiation or annihilation. History shows that cornered superpowers do not negotiate. They consider the unthinkable: nuclear escalation. Once a tactical nuclear bomb is used, an irreversible chain reaction begins. The first wave targets military bases and ground formations. This accelerates the conflict, leading to a second wave of strategic city destroyers. These bombs vaporize everything within miles, consuming entire districts in firestorms. Nations deploy their full nuclear triad: ICBMs, air-launched bombs, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles, ensuring retaliation even if cities are lost. Missile defense systems fail against saturation attacks, as hundreds of warheads, decoys, and EMP blasts overwhelm defenses. The aftermath leaves cities as uninhabitable radioactive dead zones, with millions dying from burns and debris, and radiation sickness spreading for generations. Nuclear EMP pulses destroy power grids, communications, and vehicles, collapsing the electronic foundation of modern civilization. Over 100 nuclear weapons trigger nuclear winter, blocking sunlight, plummeting global temperatures, and causing worldwide crop failure. Ecosystems collapse, rivers freeze, and the food chain breaks, pushing humanity to the brink of extinction. Governments retreat to bunkers, nations fragment into warlord-controlled regions, and law and order completely vanish. Survivors live in primitive conditions, knowledge is lost, and new tribal societies compete for limited resources.